Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hey, female world dominators. Welcome. I just got back from a nice long vacation. And I think you all might agree that going on a really nice long vacation where you really unplug, you really unwind, you really just enjoy this life that you've been building and maybe haven't taken the time to really enjoy. There's something about that downtime that really allows me, and I think many of us, to really kind of like get to the root of what the hell am I doing with my life? Right? Like, what's going on? What have I been doing? What have I been doing with my time and my energy? And what am I loving and what am I not loving? Like, what do I want to start doing? What do I want to stop doing? What am I doing too much of? And what am I doing not enough of? How am I actually feeling, right? So I had one of those vacations, one of those where I got real quiet with myself, real introspective, and just spent a lot of time thinking and being energetically, just kind of being in this space of release and relaxation and disconnect from the day-to-day inner workings of my career, my business, all of it, just really unplugged. And what I want to share with you all today is one of the big, huge kind of gems or nuggets that came from that time alone. I wasn't alone. I was with family. I'm really enjoying myself. But I mean, that time away from work, away from my mission, away from my community, I was able to receive something really, really powerful over that time. And I want to share it with you here today in Women, Wine, and World Domination and on the podcast, as these lives double on the podcast. If you are watching this in the Facebook group, you can always head over to the podcast called The Life You Crave, and you can get it there as well. So you can listen while you fold laundry or walk your dog or, commute to and from work, whatever it is that you're doing. And if you're listening to this on the Life You Crave podcast, you can also come and join our community as long as you are female identified. We are on Facebook at Women, Wine, and World Domination Facebook group. Okay, so here's the big nugget. Here's the big reveal. I have to give credit to a good friend of mine, Robin Eckersley, who shared with me this question that she's been pondering lately, which somebody had asked her, and she's been working with this question. She shared it with me. And to be honest, I received the question at the time and I was like, ooh, I want to chew on that question too. Excuse me, my Alexa's about to give me a reminder to call Debbie. So I wanted to chew on this question too. And then I promptly kind of forgot about it. I went on my vacation. I did the things. And then I came back and I was listening to a message from Robin and it reminded me of that question, right? Like, oh, I didn't even tell you what the question is. The question that she was asked is, what is your truth? What is your truth? And not just like, what is your truth in one aspect of your life, right? Like, what are your values or whatever? It's like, what is your truth? And I was like, ooh, that sounds so hard to answer and kind of deep and heavy that like, I don't even know where I would begin, to answer that question. And so, I followed her lead and she shared with me a little bit about how she was thinking about it. And what came up for me, and this actually, you guys, came up for me in the middle of the night last night. So I had woken up to go pee, couldn't go back to sleep right away. And so I was laying there and I thought about that question, what is my truth? And I'm going to encourage you, if you're watching this and listening to this, ask yourself this question along with me and Robin, right? What is your truth? And Robin's answer, I won't share because I didn't ask her permission, was totally different than mine, although I'm aligned with Robin and her truth. My answer that came to me in the middle of the night last night was, my truth is female empowerment. right? Okay, no big surprise. I started this Facebook group, Women Wide World Domination, like no duh. But here's the thing is when I really think about like my truth, I think the first thing that comes to mind is female empowerment. And I don't necessarily just mean my empowerment, although I'm a girl, so I'm included. But what really lights me up, what really activates me, what brings me most alive, and always has, by the way, ever since I was a teenager, is seeing empowered women, right? Like not even me being that empowered woman, but seeing other empowered women. And regardless of your politics, but most likely if you're hanging out with me, we agree on some level, like Kamala Harris is like empowered, right? To like, you know, infinity and beyond. She's so empowered in my mind. And so seeing women who are empowered in that way lights me up. Another woman that I'll give as an example, well, of course, Oprah, Michelle Obama, but even Glennon Doyle, right, who wrote Untamed, which is one of the best books I've ever read. I mean, talk about empowered, right? And all of these women that I just mentioned are empowered in so many different ways, right? It's not just like there's this one way toward empowerment. So as I started to really think about how that is my truth, that is what lights me up, that is what I work for every single day, is this collective female empowerment. What I realized was, okay, what is it that gets us to empowerment? What is it that is the driver, or maybe I should say the foundation for empowerment? Because we all know that we are not set up to be empowered. I mean, maybe it's a little different now for this next generation, right? Like we're printing all these t-shirts, you know, that says the future is female and girl power is really trendy. And that's awesome. I am not in any way bashing that. Like, let's keep going. But also let's make sure that that's not just lip service, right? Like the whole reason that I became the coach that I am and started the Fempire and work with women in the capacity that I do was because I was a high school teacher who was super passionate about empowering teenage girls. And I started my very first business was called, well, first it was called Girl Rising, but then I got a cease and desist. Guess I can't use Girl Rising. So I desist. They were super cool about it. But then I got, so then I had to change the name, right? From Girl Rising to Strong Girl Soar, blah, 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 blah. Point is, it was a program designed to empower teenage girls and empower them in terms of their own self-leadership. And when I created that course, and I was running that program on my own, both in public schools and privately on my own, I realized that I really didn't have the tools that I needed to teach these girls how to govern their own lives, how to navigate their own decisions in a way that is aligned with their own unique and personal truth. I was like, I could give them my opinion all day long, which usually sounded something like, girl, you should dump him. He is a loser. Like, you know, kick his ass to the curb kind of thing. Like that was usually but that wasn't helping them to make decisions that were aligned with who they wanted to be in this world. So I knew that I needed more training. I went to life coach training and, you know, in order to do that. And then along the way, I ended up building a business, the business that I have today. I'm sharing that with you because what I realized about this entire process is that female empowerment has to be more than lip service. It has to be more than just telling girls that they should feel empowered and they can do anything. Because that doesn't matter if we aren't actually governing our own lives and our own decisions. And more importantly, we can't govern our lives and make our own decisions in a really fulfilled way, in an authentic way, in a way that contributes to our highest level if we don't even know what we want, right? We don't know what we want. And we are socially conditioned a lot of the time to really either not know what we really want or not be willing to claim what we really want. There's this clip on YouTube. Oprah Winfrey, or not YouTube. There's this clip on the internet. Oprah Winfrey was being interviewed by, I don't know, some white guy. I don't remember who. Somebody legit, maybe like Jon Stewart or something. I don't know. But she was being interviewed by some talk show host. And I don't remember exactly what the question is. This is not a quote. This is more of a paraphrase. But the question was somewhere along the lines of like, you know, what is it that enables people to be successful? What is it that makes some people successful and some people not successful? And what Oprah said was, you have to know what you want. You have to know what you want. And so what she specifically says, again, not quoting, is so many of us, and I feel like she was talking to women in particular, but so many of us don't know what we want because we never really ask the question, or we never really allow ourselves to dream into the answer, right? We are so often confined by these roles that have been impressed upon us since childhood through socialization and conditioning and all the things, that it's like, it's like a fish in water. We don't even recognize how deeply impacted we are by a lot of the social conditioning that we have experienced, both from family and society and the whole deal. Some examples of that are conditioning such as it's so important for women to be good, right? We have to be good girls. We don't want to be bad. We have to be likable. Oh my God, I'm going to do an entire live on likability at some point. We should be small. We should be in these roles of being supportive and nurturing. And while some of you might think, oh, but that's like, a thing of the past, like that's some 1950s shit. Well, no, it's actually not, right? We can still find tons of examples of where that line of thinking and that line of reasoning and that line of conditioning is alive and well. And I think you would all agree with that. And yes, we do now have we can see quite a bit of counter narrative by looking at people like Oprah and, Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris. We can counter that narrative, but the narrative is still alive and well. So here's what I wanted to offer up to you all today. This is actually, I spent hours doing this myself this morning on my couch with my coffee and my journal. And, this is not for the faint of heart. I feel like a lot of times when we women, we talk about journaling, it can kind of start to feel like it's getting a little soft and mushy and we're not like business-like and like serious. But actually, I think that men could stand to do a little bit of journaling too here, right? Because all this process is allowing yourself to get contemplative, to contemplate. And it's so funny because when women get contemplative, when we pull out our journals and start to do this contemplative work, we are, we like get put into this like category of being like soft and wishy-washy and self-help-y, which seems so far less respectable than when men do it. When men do it, it's called like philosophy, right? So like, let's just let all of that go. Grab your freaking journal. And I want you to do this exercise. This is an exercise that I did with myself this morning. And I want to offer it to you. I'm looking down at my notes, so give me just 1 second. Oh, yeah. So this is an exercise I did this morning. What I want you to think about, and this is where we start. So Oprah said, you have to know what you want. Well, how do we know what we want? Especially when we have been socially conditioned to think we want some things, to think we want certain things. And so how do you know what you want? And how do you know if what you want is really what you want, or if you're just being like brainwashed, right? Or if you've been led to think that this is what you really want. So I'm going to give you a process today that you can go through. Now, in my community, the Fempire, it's my paid community, I teach my clients an entire process around this. It's I teach a system called the FEMS system, which is a system that I created that is designed to empower women to lead their own lives. It is a self-leadership model, and it has these 4 parts. And one of the parts is food freedom. So make no mistake, you do see me out there talking about how women can actually lead their lives more powerfully when they feel like they have control over their relationship with food. And I don't mean control in a controlling way. I mean control in an empowered way. So there's a food piece, but then there's vision work. And that's what I'm going to help you a little bit with today. That's part of the pillar, the vision work pillar. And there's also a pillar that is mind work, which we will get into in future lives, but all of this can kind of layer together. And then the last pillar is support. And I'll talk about that a little bit today too. So here's what you do. You grab your journal, you grab a cup of coffee, you make sure it's quiet. I like to do this in the morning before the rest of my family has risen. And you're going to really just, first things first, you need to really allow yourself the space and the time. By the way, you freaking deserve this more than anything. Not only do you deserve the space and the time, but the world needs you to take the space and time to do this work. Because when you do this work, you become so aligned with your sense of purpose and the direction that you most desire to go in. And therefore, it will fill you with energy. It will fill you with motivation, and it will fill you with the empowerment that you need to actually actualize whatever it is that you are here to do, the self-leadership that you are. It will give you that self-leadership foundation that you need to grow yourself as a leader so that you can make your mark on the world in whatever way you were meant to do it. So the first thing you want to do, you've got your journal, you've got this quiet space, you want to first deeply relax. And I kind of hate it when people say that to me because I'm like, what? What do you mean deeply relax? Like, do you know how hard it is for me to relax? I'm a go-getter, right? Like I'm, very ambitious, focused. My number 2 Clifton Strengths in the Clifton Strengths Finders is my ability to focus. I can focus so freaking heavily, so severely on something that it's a strength, but it also can become a weakness, right? So relaxing sometimes is something that I have to work at. And so really clearing a space to allow you to relax. Now, you can Google, there's so many, different exercises out there to help you to relax. My favorite app these days is the Waking Up app, which is a meditation app, but it has so many other features in it that will help you to relax. Of course, there's Headspace. You can just Google body scan. You can do yoga nidra, which is one of my favorite ways to relax. But you really do want to allow yourself to drop in. And for some of you, that might take longer than others. For some of you who are well-versed in dropping in and deeply relaxing, it might just take you a couple of minutes. For others, it could take you 20 minutes, right? But allow yourself the space and time to be guided into a relaxation or to guide yourself into a deep relaxation for the purpose of being able to hear yourself. So this is step number 3. So the first is grab your journal, set aside the time. The second is to relax deeply. And then the third thing that you're going to do, I'm going to give you a question that you're going to ask yourself, but you have to be deeply relaxed so that the answer to this question is able to rise up from the depths of your being, of your beingness. And so what I mean by that is when our brains think up answers to questions, our brains are by design, they're designed to collect information throughout our entire lives. I mean, even in utero, we're collecting information, right? Our brains are designed to collect information and then to put together the answers to questions that will most likely keep us alive. Our brains are always in survival mode, right? So if you ask my brain to come up with an answer for maybe like a financial situation, my brain's going to tell me to go get a day job or a real job, quote unquote, right? Like that affords me like a regular paycheck, as opposed to being an entrepreneur, which for those of you, my entrepreneur friends here, there's lots of ups and downs and risks with entrepreneurship. So I don't want to use my thinking brain to answer questions like that because that's not my truth. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to work in a cubicle and get a regular paycheck. I am here to be an entrepreneur and to contribute in the ways that I know I'm here to contribute. So you want to be able to hear yourself from the depths of your being and not let your brain think up the answer. And so this is what that looks like. Here's what you're going to do. Once you're deeply, deeply relaxed, you want to ask yourself this question. And this question I got originally from a former mentor of mine who this question changed everything for me. And you need to ask this question word for word. The question is, what would I love? What would I love? What would I love in terms of my health? What would I love in terms of my contribution or my vocation, right? So for some of you, that might be, what would I love in terms of my career? What would I love in terms of my contribution in the world? What would I love in terms of my sense of purpose? What would I love? The third question is, what would I love in terms of my time? And your time category, what I want you to think about is, what would you love for your calendar to look like? How much white space would you love to have on your calendar? How much travel would you love to have on your calendar? Right? So really, how much time with family, friends do you want to have on your calendar? So time is something that it can be tangible in this process by thinking about it in terms of what your calendar looks like, what your rhythms look like. And then what would you love in terms of your relationships and in terms of your finances, in terms of your money? What would I love? Now, I am specifically using the word love and not want, because these are those two words will evoke two totally different responses a lot of the time. What would I love is love is a feeling, right? And so it's this feeling of like, what feels like it's wrapped in love for me. Now, what do I want? A lot of times that's still pretty cerebral, right? That's still pretty like, I want like a checklist. I want this, I want this, I want this. But what would I love, right? It literally just kind of tips you into a dreaming state, right? Where you start to dream about your life. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that my clients make with this process, and I take them through an elaborate visioning process in this way. But one of the mistakes that they make is, I'm thinking of one client in particular who's in this group, so she can out herself if she wants to, but is her brain automatically feels like she's making a plan when she asks that question. And so what happens is if your brain goes into planning mode, where you're like, well, I would love to go to Italy every year. And then immediately your brain starts to go into this place of like, you can't go to Italy every year. Like, you only have 2 weeks vacation. How are you going to do that? Because you also have to go visit your mom and you have to blah, 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 right? So your brain starts to go in this place of like, that idea of what you would love is not possible. So we're going to just push it right out. And that, by the way, will completely kill this entire process, right? Because you're not making a plan. You're just exploring what you would love. Think about it like you used to when you were a kid and you were just playing imagination, right? You're just daydreaming. But this kind of daydreaming is so important because this kind of daydreaming becomes like an energetic roadmap, not a real roadmap, not a real plan, but an energetic roadmap. And the purpose of this is to help connect you with what it is in this world that you most want to experience, that you most want to contribute, that you most want to be and do and have, right? It just connects you to the truth, regardless of whether or not that truth is accessible to you in this exact moment, right? Now, here's the deal. You might come up with this beautiful, elaborate vision for yourself, and you're like, wow, I would love all of, X, Y, and Z in all of these different arenas of my life. Now, some of you might be like, but wait a minute, how do I know that this is actually what I would love? And it's not just what I've kind of been socialized or conditioned to think that I would love, right? So an example of that might be, I would love to, meet, I have quite a few clients who would love to meet a romantic partner. And maybe a part of that then starts to come up, this idea of living together and getting married and doing all the things. But really, in truth, maybe what they would love is to have a romantic partner that, I always joke about this with my own husband, but instead, like, y'all live in a duplex and like, they've got their space and you've got your space. And like, because it allows your brain to be creative. It allows your brain to start to see new opportunities that maybe you couldn't see before because you were confined and constricted by what was quote unquote possible. And just a quick note on what's quote unquote possible. When I was a kid, I remember my dad owned a business in San Francisco, and my dad got a car phone. And car phone, like, nobody else I knew had a car phone, like zero, nobody. It was like the biggest freaking deal. Like, me and my friends just thought it was like the coolest thing in the entire world. And I remember my dad saying, Leah, one day they're going to make phones that are so small, they will fit in your pocket and you'll be able to like walk around with them. They'll be like computers. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, that just is like wild. Like, a car phone was wild, right? With the cord. You guys know what I'm talking about? It was like huge. Well, guess what? Mike Pinelli called it on that one, right? And so my point is that you don't know that anything's possible until somebody does it. Right? Nobody knew that flying an airplane was going to be possible until the Wright brothers pulled it off. In fact, everybody told them that they were absolutely crazy for even believing something like that was possible. So before you discount your wants, before you think to yourself that this is impossible, just remember nothing was possible until somebody freaking thought it up. Like, this microphone on my desk wasn't possible until somebody thought it up. Okay? So now, I want to offer you an integrity check in this process. So an integrity check is when you're like, okay, I've got this vision for myself, but I actually want to check to see, is this the real vision for me? Or have I maybe, is it any of it kind of washed over or watered down by these subconscious social expectations that exist upon me, right? So an integrity check for me, I teach integrity checks to the Fempire in this way, which is you want to ask yourself, you're going to go through your vision step by step, and you're going to ask yourself this question, which is, when I think about this thing, right? So for me, one of the parts of my vision is, this is a new piece, but I would love to eventually create a women's self-leadership institute, right? And it's a place that women can go, women and girls of all ages, right? All ages from 5 to 105. And there are courses and programs and experiences that will bolster their self-leadership capacity and bolster their empowerment. So when I think about that, the question that I have to ask myself, this is how you do an integrity check, is I say, okay, Leah, when you think about that, how does it feel physically in your body? Does it feel expansive? And for me, when I think about that, I feel super warm and open and excited. I feel like I'm basking in sunshine. Like, it is so expansive for me. It makes me so excited to think about. Or does it feel contracting? Like, does it feel like it's making me contract? And an example of that, I know I've had an example in the past. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but let's say, let me just make this up. Let's say in my vision, part of my vision is to, create this institute, and maybe in my mind thinks, in order to do that, I'm going to have to travel a lot. Well, I personally really love to travel, but I'm going to have to travel a lot, which means I'm going to have to be away from my family a lot. So when I think about, okay, traveling a lot alone, how do I feel? Well, I don't feel quite so expansive. I start to feel like I'm contracting there. And so maybe travel isn't actually a part of my vision of what I would love. Now, again, for me, it totally is. If you know me, you know that I love to go to a hotel alone and leave my family at home. And I'm sure some of you can relate to that as well. But that's kind of that's the integrity check. Do you feel expansive, or do you feel, Dr. Martha Beck used to call this shackles on and shackles off? Do you feel like you're free, or do you feel like you're really chained down? Like it doesn't feel good to you? And if you do find things in what comes up for you and what surfaces for you in this process that feel shackled, I would encourage you to rethink it, right? To just experience that again. Leave that of the vision, leave that part out of the process. And then what you're going to do after you've done all of that is you're going to write it all down. You might actually write it down before you do the integrity check, but you want to write it all down, and you want to write it down in the moment. So after you've let yourself vision through those different areas, write it down, and write it down while it's fresh, because you're in an energetic state where you're alive with it. So allow yourself to write it down, and write it down in the present tense as if it's already happened to you. This becomes your guiding document. In the Fempire, every single woman in the Fempire creates a vision for themselves using this method. I guide them through it, and it's a little more robust than what I've shared with you here. But I guide them through it. I type while they talk. And then they have this working document for themselves, this working blueprint. It's a blueprint. It is your blueprint. It is not your plan. It is your blueprint for your life. It is your energetic signature on what is it that you want to most experience in the world? What is it? What is the legacy that you want to leave in this world? Who do you want to be in this world is defined, is revealed by this process. So I highly, highly encourage you to do this. Now, what does this have to do with self-leadership? Let me go back full circle to the self-leadership piece. I teach a process for self-leadership, and the first part of the process is really to identify your own thought patterns and your belief systems that are holding you back in terms of getting whatever it is that you want in your life. But you won't know what's holding you back and getting in your way if you don't know what you really, really want. And so many of us, we go after what we really, really want, and for some reason, we never really achieve it, or we lose steam or momentum. And a lot of the time, it's because we didn't really freaking want it in the first place. But we didn't know we didn't want it because we didn't know how to know what we really want, because we've been socially conditioned, to not know that shit. So that is your process. I'm going to recap it right here, right now. You can always come back and listen to this later. You can listen to it on the podcast, like I said. But here is the process. It is a 4-step process to figuring out what it is that you really, really want. First and foremost, you have to set aside time with a journal. Second, you have to deeply, deeply relax. Third, you have to ask yourself the very most important question. How's that for grammar? The most important question, which is, what would I love? And then you're going to write it all down. That's number 4. And do that integrity check. Maybe integrity check should be step 5. It's a 5-step process. But do the integrity check. Then you will know exactly what you want. Now, let me also say real quick here that sometimes it can feel scary when you're like, holy cow, this is what I want. I'm so far off. Yeah, you're supposed to be far off, right? This is a journey. But this community, the Women, Wine, and World Domination community, is your community to get lots of support with that. You can also book a call with me, and I would be more than happy to guide you through how you can get the support you need to actually realize your dream, your vision, what it is that you want for yourself, so that we can build a world of women who are self-leading, who are self-authorities, and who are basically taking over. I think that's how I'm going to end every single live and podcast episode. Is some note about women taking over the world. So let's go do it, sisters.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.